Welcome to the Potter Discussion.
Welcome back to the Potter Discussion. This is episode 103. And on today's episode, we will be discussing how Halloween was made in the movies and why it matters for the story in the books. Let's do this. Hello, welcome back to the Potter Discussion. Today I am very excited to be recording because we are finishing up the part 2s. That is right. So we had episode 100 and we had so many part 2s, but now we are finally finishing all of those up. And you might be confused, so let me explain. So, we had Breakdown Draco Malfoy Part 2, and that was a huge success. I'm so glad we did that. That was out of the way. And just this past week, I've been thinking about the Harry Potter After Hogwarts episode and how that is very similar to Harry Potter 8, the 8th book. And I was noticing how those two were similar and how the Harry Potter After Hogwarts is a very good part 2 to Harry Potter 8, and I figured that was a good part 2. So this week I wanted to finish up the part 2s, do a Halloween episode, and combine the documentary part 2 with a Halloween themed episode. And I know it's only the US that celebrates it, but there are some pretty interesting things in and around Halloween that I think are definitely pointed out in the books and movies that I think are very valuable to talk about. So we will be discussing how the filmmakers made Harry Potter come alive in the movies and in the books, how that kind of is reflected in the magic of Halloween in the real world, and how wizards kind of take that to the next level. So that's what we will be discussing in today's episode. Before we get started, I will remind you that the two links in the show notes below, the SpeakPipe page link and the Google form link, are still available. You can just click those, send a voice submission or a text submission, and you can have your voice heard on the show. If you have any opinions that you might want to share, if you have anything that you would just want me to know, I would absolutely love to hear what you have to say. It's completely free and it'll only take a minute of your time. If you don't want to use those two methods of communication, you can always send me an email. My email is thepotterdiscussion@gmail.com. That is thepotterdiscussion@gmail.com. I hope you like that new intro song. That's pretty fancy. I like it a lot. And yeah, let's get into today's episode. Before we get into the meat of this episode, there was a quick update with the Secrets of Dumbledore. The locations have changed. Now we have been but Warner Bros. Has released information that Rio is no longer on the list of places, but places in Asia and Africa are now on the list. So we are exploring the world, but Rio is not there. So that's just a quick update on that, and we don't know what that might mean right now. As of now, we have no extra information, but if anything else comes out, I will 100% tell you before anyone else. So keep your ears open, but just so you know, Rio is no longer on the list of movie locations. And to kick this episode off, I want to talk about what traits the filmmakers would have wanted to include in the Halloween scenes of the movies. So this is an interesting topic because Halloween is a very interesting and a really intricate holiday. There are, you dress up, you go around, you get candy, and in Hogwarts, I don't think there would be much trick-or-treating. And the question here is, how could the magic of Halloween be brought alive in the movie and still have that classic Halloween feel, but also contain the magic of the wizarding world? And that's really the challenge with the filmmakers, because they have to figure out a way to do that. And I think one of the major ways that they did was by enchanting by making some of the elements of Halloween be in the books and the real world and kind of combine the concepts, like the the pumpkins. You know, you don't find pumpkins that that are described as like six fully grown people could just sit in them comfortably. Pumpkins like that don't exist, and Hagrid was growing them and they were huge. So that combines the concept of the pumpkin for Halloween and the wizarding pumpkin, and also the bats flying around on the ceiling and the ghosts. It's something that we see, but it's not like an actual magical thing. And I think that's a really easy way for the filmmakers to make Halloween come alive, by combining the concepts that already exist and adding their own flair by putting on the magical elements that we see in the film. However, it is difficult because they still had to figure out a way to make it a Harry Potter Halloween. They still had to make sure that everything was perfect. And I think they did that really well in the Chamber of Secrets. I was noticing that was a very, very well done scene with the whole Halloween feast. And I believe that was when Harry, Ron, and Hermione got invited to the Death Day party, Nicholas Flamel's Death Day party. And they had to go because Nicholas Flamel, did I say Nicholas Flamel? I meant Nearly Headless Nick. Nick invited Harry, Ron, and Hermione, Harry, to the Death Day party after Harry said, "Thank you for saving me from that embarrassing situation with Filch. Is there anything I can do for you?" And he said, "Yes, you can, tell the Headless Hunt that I'm very scary and you can come to my Death Day party." And Harry did. He showed up at the Death Day party and he told the Nearly Headless, I always say Nearly Headless because that's exactly what Nick calls them, because he is nearly headless and he wants to be in the Headless Hunt. But so Harry tells the Headless Hunt that Nick is very scary. And of course they say, "Oh, I bet he told you to say that." And of course he did. But nonetheless, Harry did go to the Death Day party, and it was a very interesting concept. And yes, it wasn't thought up. They didn't think it up, but I think it was kind of interesting of them to not include that scene, because of course that's not in the movie. But what is in the movie is another really good scene that was very, I thought, interesting of them to include that instead of the Death Day party, because yes, the Death Day party was, I feel like, more Halloween-y, when the writing on the wall was very much, just like Harry Potter-y, creepy kind of thing. And I mean, as kind of a side tangent, the first time, like the second book was really the first time that I was genuinely scared of something that was going to happen in the Harry Potter books. And I was listening to the audiobook, and I always listen to the Jim Dale versions of the Harry Potter books, and I was noticing that it was so good the way he did it, voicing the basilisk and seeing the writing on the wall. And that was really the first time that I was thinking wow, this is really creepy. I hope Harry makes it out of this. So I'm very clearly remember that being the first time that I was really thinking oh no, what's gonna happen? Yeah, so the writing on the wall was very much more creepy, and it does fit with Halloween. But the Nicholas, I always say Nicholas, it's not Nicholas Flamel, it is Nearly Headless Nick. So the Death Day party not being included is very Halloween-y, but the writing on the wall is more creepy than Halloween-y. But I can see why they decided to include that, because it's much more important to the story. But it is still a creepy element of the story, and the filmmakers executed it very well with the writing on the wall. And I think that if they had included the Death Day party, the writing on the wall would have been, in contrast, it would have been much less of a shock. You know what I'm saying? Because going from Halloween feast to writing on the wall is a huge shock. But then going from cold, dark Death Day party to writing on the wall is like, oh no, that shouldn't be there. But it's not like, I'm scared. It's like, oh no, how do we clean this up kind of thing. It's just like nothing new. And I know that Harry didn't come from the Halloween feast even in the movie, but it was still not that big of a shock, at least that's kind of what I'm imagining, if they had included the Death Day party. So I think it was a good choice for them to draw out the scene without the Death Day party of the writing on the wall. But if they had included the Death Day party scene, I think it would have been much better for them to kind of skim over the writing on the wall and more focus on the meaning than the actual scare of the scene itself. Another challenge that the filmmakers had to face was bringing the story to life and including the magical elements that we would expect to see in the books and that we have read about in the books, and that a Harry Potter Halloween would have, and include those in the movies. And we did talk about this a little bit before, but I would like to focus on this concept a little bit, just because it is such a difficult thing to imagine and put into play. Of course, just a movie in general is very difficult to make if you are going off of a book and there is a whole different story that wasn't really made for the big screen that's supposed to be, reflected onto it, which is very difficult because I don't think Joe had, the idea of putting Harry Potter into a movie. Of course, that's every author's dream, but I don't know if she was, really thinking about, I want this to be a movie and really designing the book to be that way. And that's the challenge of making a movie off of a book. There's just so many elements in the book that just can't be reflected on the screen, so they have to make some, adjustments and, different things that they had to do. So the things that maybe there are just so many things that were a little difficult to convey to the movies, and things like the pumpkins, for example, the owls, and things like the floating candles just have to be done completely by CGI because there is no way that they can grow pumpkins that big. And of course, I think the pumpkins are probably the most plausible just because they could build them out of cardboard and they wouldn't make them out of actual pumpkins just because pumpkins don't get that big. And although they couldn't make them out of real pumpkin, I still think that it isn't a very large prop. Yes, it is a large pumpkin, but it is not like the Great Hall. They don't have to get crews of construction workers. All they have to have is just a small team of, prop makers to create the pumpkins. So the magical elements that they would want to include would be combining the concepts of the real world with the concepts of Harry Potter. Things like the ghosts. Some people, dress up in pillowcases and, white gloves, and they call themselves ghosts. Hogwarts has ghosts, real ghosts. So that is just one of the elements that the filmmakers could count on making Halloween more Halloweeny. And the pumpkins, like we mentioned, are huge pumpkins. We have pumpkins in Halloween, but we also have Harry Potter pumpkins that the filmmakers also included, just so it's even that extra mile. And I think probably the most challenging part was the Halloween feast, because the Halloween feast is huge, probably one of the biggest that Hogwarts does, just period. And they would have to make all these kinds of different food and, create real food and fake food. And they would have to design, different pictures and tables and make a whole color scheme and light fires and, build different doors and, paint so many different things. And just making the, kind of decorating the Great Hall, Hogwarts Halloween style, is definitely the biggest challenge with the feast, because they would have to have the feast, the food. They would have to have all these different things all over the windows, all over the ceiling. And it's just a huge challenge to take on, that they would have to, decorate the whole thing, which is very, very, very difficult to decorate a space that big. Now, a little fun fact, the Hogwarts Great Hall is actually made up of the same, it's not CGI, it's not a green screen in a hallway. They actually built it, and the floors are made out of real stone, which is crazy because the Chris Columbus, the director of the first movie, he had an image of the film in his mind, and when he wanted to put that into play, the Great Hall with the fake stone floors, it just didn't have the same magic he wanted to, the same reality. So he said, just put in real stone, and they did, and it worked, and they kept it forever. That's just a quick little tidbit, which is pretty cool. And of course, it's not as big as was described in the movie because that's just ridiculous, but it is still real. And that just makes it all the more difficult for the filmmaker to decorate it for Halloween, because there is just so much of there's so much pure stuff to decorate. So much that they have to take care of and just notice and write down and, sit down with each other and kind of figure out with the cameras and moving all the people around and, adding CGI and post and making sure everyone is moving in the right direction at the same time and making sure that the lights all line up with the CGI that they're going to add in post-production and having the candles decorated with the bats and the banquet hall and decorating the Great Hall. So that's just a small list. Just a small list of the things that they had to take care of. So yeah, that was just a little small rant of what the filmmakers had to do. So very, very difficult. But I must say, they did pull it off. For the few Halloween things that we saw, they definitely pulled the whole Halloween thing off. And it definitely worked, and it definitely will continue to. And our final documentary-related talking point. Yes, this part 2 has been with us so long, I'm drying my eyes. Did the movie Halloween live up to the books? This is the age-old question. Is the movie better than the book? Are the movies better than the books? The answer is we have no idea. It is up to the person individually watching or reading. But from what I can see, I would say my answer is yes. I do think the movies did live up to the books, only because I don't think they were similar. Let me explain. Like I was saying, the books could have crazy things that didn't need to be portrayed in anything other than words, but the movie had to put it into visual. So the filmmakers had to invent different kinds of magical items that we've been talking about. And they did that very well. So living up to doesn't mean mirroring exactly. So I think the filmmakers definitely made a very, very satisfactory Halloween with new concepts and amazing different, little elements that just make it all the more amazing. And yes, it was not the same as the book, but we don't need it to. All we need is a good Halloween. And I think the movies definitely lived up to that. So the next couple talking points are just some fun Halloween ones. And we are starting off with which characters would enjoy Halloween the most. This is a difficult one because there are so many characters that would do so many different things. I think let's start with the trio. I think Harry would definitely not be really out there, living up the party and dressing up this crazy costume. I think he would just, wear something orange or something that was Halloween-like, but he wouldn't be a character. And I think Hermione would would be someone from history, like a notable figure or something that the kind of person that no one would understand. Only people who read that one book in the library at the very back. Harry would be no one, but he would still get into the Halloween spirit kind of a little bit. Hermione would be some historical figure and try to get Harry and Ron into the party. And I think Ron would try to avoid being anything, but Molly would send him a costume. Yeah, that is exactly what would happen. Harry would do nothing but try to get into the spirit. Hermione would be a character from, the past, and Ron would be forced into a costume. So Molly would send him a costume he would refuse to wear, then Fred and George would just force it on him and put some kind of permanent sticking charm onto it, onto his body. So yeah, that's so accurate. And I think the next obvious person would be Luna. Luna, I think, would also kind of, find an interesting costume. Maybe someone that Oh, I know. She would be like the Minister of Magic, claiming it's like he's the scariest person of all because he cooks goblins into pies, like the Quibbler in Order of the Phoenix. So she would be something like that, like is like existing, but no one really understands. Or some kind of magical creature like the Crumplehorn Snorkack, or something like that, and she would wear something ridiculous, but would still be like a great costume because that's really what like who Luna is, kind of standing out in a oddly like unique and really brave way. So I think that's what Luna would do. And then for someone like, I don't know, let's say like Malfoy and his friends, I don't think Malfoy would dress up as anyone, but I think he would use Halloween as an excuse to kind of, put on a really fancy thing and kind of just show everyone that he has that fancy thing. And if it really mattered, I think he would like do one of those like couple costumes with Pansy Parkinson. I can definitely imagine Pansy really forcing Draco into that because Draco is not like the, kind of the standout type. He wants to stand out for being like the cool, kind of cold, mean, rich guy who wants to join Voldemort, even though he secretly doesn't. See Breakdown and Breakdown 2. But I still think that he would want to, kind of he would want to fit in kind of the, like I don't really care, but I care enough to make you kids have a good time kind of thing, just really putting himself above everyone else in the way of, just like something fancy, maybe putting on like a green and orange bow tie, and then really just going to humor his, I'm not gonna call him peers because they're just so below him. So Draco would definitely go as something other than a character, but he would definitely dress up and use Halloween as an excuse to do something fancy. And now, who else? Who else can we think of? Maybe Neville. Who would Neville go as? I think Neville. Oh, I know. So Neville would see someone else doing something and then be thinking like, oh wow, that's a great idea. I'm gonna do that. And then Neville does that, and then it's so much worse than the other person, and it really shows. Right now, I'm thinking of if you've watched The Office, when in the Halloween episode where Creed they puts on all the makeup as the Joker, and then Dwight puts on all the makeup as the Joker, and then Kevin puts all the makeup on for the Joker, and he goes, "Come on, I was up, until 3 doing this." So if you know what I mean, then I think you can definitely relate to Neville being Kevin, and then maybe someone else being, another person copying even Neville. So if you don't know what I'm saying, I'm sorry for that tangent, but that's the exact situation that comes to mind. But Neville, would see someone go, "That's a good idea, do that," and then someone else would see Neville and go, "Oh, that's a great idea," and then do that too. So it would be a whole chain, but the original person would do it so much better than the person who copied Neville would do it the second best, and then Neville dead last, doing not even being the last person to copy the costume. So that's I think what Neville would do. And I think I'm going to get someone from Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff. From Hufflepuff, who do we know from Hufflepuff? Or how about Cedric Diggory? Who would Cedric be? Say, in the 4th year Halloween, who would Cedric be? This is a difficult one because we didn't really get to know Cedric, and he's kind of the same. He has the same kind of attitude as Draco, but it's much more positive, and it's kind of like it's kind of flipped, but the same as Draco, if you know what I mean. Draco's like too cool to be there, and he just wants to stand out. But stand out as the cool person, and Cedric just wants everyone else to have a good time and kind of like stand in as the person who's just like everyone else and nice and having a good time. So who would Cedric be? I think Cedric would find this like ridiculous costume, and he would maybe do it on a dare, and he would dress up on a dare in this crazy costume, and then he would go to the party or the feast, and he would be kind of like dancing his heart out without even thinking about what other people are thinking of him, because he is just having a great time. So I think that's what Cedric would do. And then from Ravenclaw, who do we know? I guess, Luna's in Ravenclaw, but maybe someone like Cho Chang. So I think Cho would kind of go as, something that her parents would want. No, I mean, I guess, but I can't see Cho dressing up in this like whole extravagant, this whole thing. So I think that Cho would kind of dress up kind of following the same lines as Cedric and Harry. And I know that Cedric and Harry didn't really have the same kind of costume or really the same kind of, out there attitude. But I think Cho would try to find like a happy middle and spend the same amount of time with Cedric and the same amount of time with Harry, just, to even it out. And so she could kind of, be the same as Cedric and Harry and kind of do that. So that was a very long talking point, but a very fun one of who would get into what kind of costume for Halloween. And next up, we have what kind of special lessons would the teachers decide to put on? And that's an interesting one because there are some teachers that would do nothing or something like an inside kind of really sinister joke, Snape, and some teachers who would really have fun with it, like Flitwick or even McGonagall. So let's start with, let's say Snape. What would Snape do? And I was thinking about this one. So I think Snape would give them this whole like scary lecture about poison, talk about how painful it is when you get that poison, how there's no antidote, and how you die painfully when you get it, and then task them like with finding an antidote for the antidoteless poison, and just make a horrible lesson for them. I think that's what Snape would do. He would torture them with a horrifying lecture, and then tell them to do something impossible. That's what Snape would do for Halloween. He would just, go, whatever. I'm letting my hair down. Y'all can take care of that. So he would definitely he would have fun with that one. But that it would be horrible for Harry and Ron and Hermione. And then for someone like Flitwick, I think Flitwick would, teach them a charm that's like something that they could like use like against their friends as like a Halloween prank, or something to enchant like the armor to scare someone when they walk by, or like trip someone or something like that. Or maybe Flitwick would teach them a charm that was like fun, and in the Halloween sense that would scare someone, and that's what he would personally enjoy, hearing the screams of children as they were scared. That sounds weird, but I think that Flitwick would definitely have some fun with teaching the school some fun charms that would definitely scare the life out of some people. And I think McGonagall would do something similar. She wouldn't have so much fun with it, but she would like still teach them a useful spell, but at the end kind of put it in the context of a Halloween themed thing. Like she would show them like transfiguration of some kind of plant, and then show them how they could like transfer into like something that looks good, and then when like the person goes up to eat it, it like transforms into something, and they drop it and they're so scared and they run away. So she would definitely teach them a useful spell that they could actually use, but she definitely wouldn't. I don't think McGonagall would like have the fun that Snape or Flitwick would. And of course, Snape's fun is very much, a cruel fun. But I think Flitwick's fun is a lighthearted and something that maybe the prankster or the prankee wouldn't want, but the pranker would definitely enjoy. All right, I think that was it. This was the documentary part 2 and the Happy Halloween part 1. I was going to say part 2, but this is just a Happy Halloween episode and a documentary part 2. So that is a very fun thing. Now we have all the part 2s out of the way, and I'm very excited. If you're hearing this, you might care a little bit what I have to say. And we are getting back into the swing of things after episode 100 and after all these part 2s. I think now we can get back into it. So now, going forward from here, you're going to be hearing a lot of Quizmasters, Flip the Scripts, breakdowns. You're going to be hearing discussion episodes. You're going to be hearing special episodes. You're going to be hearing so many fun and amazing things, so definitely stick around for that. If you're not already subscribed, I would highly recommend that, because if you don't, you might miss a fun episode. So please make sure you subscribe, make sure you rate this 5 stars so you can let me know that you like the show and I should continue making it. Definitely share this with someone if you want to spread this message, and definitely send me an email or a voice submission or a text submission if you want me to know anything that you might have to say, because I want to hear it. Don't be afraid, because I'm absolutely not going to do something that you would not want me to do. In fact, the voice submissions that have already been submitted have said that they don't want their things played on the show, and I didn't. I don't think you've heard any voice submissions. So that just goes to show that I will definitely not do anything that would put you out of your comfort zone. So don't be afraid to send anything, because that's really how I hear from you. That's how I get your ideas. And if you've ever had a thought that's saying, oh, he should really do that, then send me it. Send me that idea, because I will do it. Because I love what you have to say, and I absolutely would love to know what is going on. All right, I think that's it. The question this week: what would you dress up for at Halloween if you were at Hogwarts? And what pranks would you pull? That's the question. Think about it. Maybe send me a voice submission, text submission, or email. thepotterdiscussion@gmail.com. I don't know. All right, see you next week. As always, use Missed Your Advantage, and I will see you later.
This was the Potter Discussion.